Morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much.
I watched The Exorcist like an hour ago. So
Why would you do that? Why would you do this morning?
I have no time.
Oh, why would you do that? It's not a morning film.
It's not a morning film.
Oh my god.
I need to lie down in the fetal position.
Jesus. Oh,
I-
just as Friedkin intended it.
Just as it was intended.
Oh my god. Right. What do we got? I've left my food in my bag.
Kitchen's a mess.
Kitchen looks like it's exploded.
It's exploded.
There's mess everywhere.
And no one would quite be able to tell what was made in it because we did so many different things with food.
But it was also the longest prep I think we've ever had.
Easily the longest, yeah. By like at least 100% longer. Than
100% longer than it would normally take us. And the food is not 100% better. I just want to make that clear. It's 100% the same. Look, what have I got for you today, James? It's like a brunch time, getting more near lunchtime now because of the prep. But I've got for you a sort of salmon niçoise is what it's called. Jamie Oliver recipe. Just rustled it together. We got some salmon. We got some. The dressing is yogurt mixed with chopped up asparagus with some black olives.
James, get some B-roll rolling over this.
Some red wine vinegar, some olive oil, some salt and pepper. And on the salmon, we've got some lemon. We've got a little bit of butter in there. Topped off with some chopped up boiled eggs. I just hope you like it.
I've not had this before, but it reminds me, and I mean this in a good way, like you go to a very sort of upper class English tea room that serves these very like clean summer's day lunches, sort of like fresh, zesty, very sort of lean, high protein. It reminds me of that. That's where it's taking me.
It's interesting as well because when I told you about some of the ingredients this week, it doesn't sell it well. It's like yogurt, olives, red wine vinegar.
Yeah, that's what you asked me if I had. And I'm like, what the hell is he doing?
So, anyway, this is like, when you say about the English tea room, actually, you know what? I know what film this could be in.
Go on.
It's The Phantom Thread. When he goes to the tea room, he orders the entire breakfast.
That's exactly what I was inadvertently referencing.
Quite over the top. And of course, there's that whole scene in Phantom Thread about the asparagus later on when he's like, "You've cooked my asparagus in oil." And
I don't know why you cooked it in that way.
Yeah, are you here? Do you have a gun? Are you?
He's so like overly English. You almost sound slightly foreign. It's
Yes,
almost
it almost
kind
sounds slightly
it's
French.
slightly French,
But he's so-
or a little bit like I was Dutch maybe 10 years ago. But it's kind. I'm drifting into Arnold Schwarzenegger. But
Famously Dutch. Arnold
no,
Schwarzenegger.
but I don't know.
Yeah.
I was drifting
Yeah,
into the
yeah.
Austrian Arnold Schwarzenegger.
So anyway, that's what I've got for you. I think it's kind of a brunchy Phantom Thread tea roomy-esque thing. It's sort of salmon niçoise. It's getting cold. Let's bloody eat the thing.
let's go for it. Spot on. Without even us tasting it, that's exactly the setting.
What the Phantom Thread thing?
Yes, it's English Phantom Thread. I want to try to find something more period. What would it be?
Well,
Like the importance of being earnest. That's more like
Or
scones.
like Agatha Christie.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I feel like this is kind of like, we had this shortly before, Mr. Higgins was murdered. I remember because it was 12 o'clock.
It was in the olive yogurt.
The art of yogurt.
Yeah.
I would say that having yogurt and the olives and the vinegar really works as a dressing. It really brings that kind of strong zestiness to it. The original recipe had green beans, by the way. I think asparagus is much more suitable.
No, asparagus is nice. There's more complexity in it. You could do you could make it more salady by having green bean, asparagus. I'd always say like edamame and like spritz that together with the vinegar dressing and then lay salmon on top with a sort of yogurty thing.
Or create a base of new potatoes. Or
Yes.
even
It's
bread.
very like gone to lunch with the queen, isn't it? Like the new potatoes. Apparently she eats that all the time, by the way.
New potatoes.
New potatoes, salmon.
They never get
green
old.
Beans, yeah. She has like boiled green, boiled green vegetables, potatoes, and salmon, and she's still going strong.
If that's the secret to it, that I'm onto something.
Yeah. So just to accompany fabulous meal you just made, this week I was actually working at a place called East London Liquor Gin, or East London Liquor Company. Really great place, just in East London. They basically distill all their gin and whiskey in the bar. So if you look through the bar, you can just see all the pipes and the things that hold all the gin. Really cool spot. I was working there, and a guy also called James refused to let me leave without a bottle of gin, and he was just really trying to give us loads of stuff. Definitely go check it out. This is their gin and tonic, which we'll try now.
Fantastic.
Well, it's their gin with a tonic, so cheers. That's lovely. And you know what? It actually smells like the place I was at because that's where they made it. Which
You
funnily
smell the
enough,
distillery in there.
I was taken back. Really good spot. They have really cool tap rooms, whiskey tasting. So if you haven't checked out East London Liquor Company, they're right by Victoria Park.
Okay.
100% go.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, I'm already convinced on gin.
Yes.
But I might need to be convinced on whiskey. But I think maybe I just need a new approach.
I
Maybe I
tried-
need to see it being distilled to...
It was very cool, and I tried. They did a whiskey tasting for us. I tried a 59% whiskey. I touched my lips to it, and it was like, boom, whoosh. It was like how I was hot flush. My lips
3
were on
hours
fire.
later, I woke up.
Yeah, genuinely. I was
Wow,
like, fuck,
fantastic.
I just let it touch my lips, and I
Oh.
was drunk.
That sounds
It's fantastic.
I'm going to have another sip. That'd
Yeah,
be
yeah,
very
do it.
fresh.
It's really, really good. But you and I both saw Belfast this week.
Yeah.
New film directed by Kenneth Branagh. It's set in 1969 in Belfast, shockingly. And this is basically what Kenneth Branagh has said is a very personal story. It's based on a true experience that he had in Belfast during a 20 or 30 year, the start of a 20 or 30 year conflict called the Troubles, or the Troubles in Belfast. And it's set in a working class estate called Tiger Bay in North Belfast, as I said, 1969. And it basically forms the perspective of this very young character played by, I think it was a 10-year-old at the time of recording, called Jude Hill. It also stars Jamie Dornan, Katrina Balfe, Judi Dench, Kieran Hines, a couple of others I'm missing out. Jamie Dornan, I said.
Colin Morgan?
Colin Morgan, yeah, he's very good in it. And essentially what it does is it follows this kid's life essentially get turned upside down, and everything he sort of knows about his neighborhood is kind of being changed by this conflict, which he's trying to understand. And you've got this conflict between the parents, played by Jamie Dornan and Katrina Balfe, essentially deciding what to do and whether or not they should leave. And you've got this wonderful interaction between the grandparents and what it means to be in Belfast. And there's this whole idea of sort of, yes, you can move, but it takes a village to raise a child. And you can see that they're on a street where everyone knows each other. And I think the main thing you sort of see, which is so charming, is that this boy is so concerned with everything else that a 10-year-old is worried about. Like the idea of leaving Belfast is so traumatizing to him because he's so in love with a girl in his class. And there's a sort of wonderful scene where the kids in the class are organized by how well they did in their last test. So you were at the front of the class if you did the best, and you were at the back of the class if you did the worst. And he realizes he's just a couple of grade percentages away from sitting next to the girl of his dreams, who he's like, oh, it's so sad because I want to grow up and I want to marry her and she can see other guys, but we'll be married. And he's clearly planned his whole life ahead. And so he's trying to get better grades to sit closer. And that's basically all he's really worried about. And I think the main thing about it is it really is from his perspective. And if there's a conversation happening with adults, it happens because he's overhearing it. It's getting a lot of Oscar buzz at the moment. It's shot pretty much in black and white, apart from a few key sequences.
At the beginning,
it
shows Belfast, contemporary Belfast now.
Contemporary Belfast, yeah. Which he sort of thought he said he thought it was important to show off Belfast in its modern day.
And there was actually in an earlier cut of the film, and they even shot this, was Kenneth Branagh playing an older version of the child returning to Belfast and walking the streets in colour. But that got cut because it didn't work. I'm kind of glad it isn't there.
I
I don't
agree.
think you need it at all.
Even though I haven't seen that side of it, I think it didn't need it. But George, what did you think of it altogether?
Well, I think that it's interesting. It's a lovely film. It's so personal and it's so warm, and it's really. I have nothing mean or anything to say about it because it's such a hard film to have any bad feelings towards. It's obviously really personal.
So much, yeah.
I'm glad because, I don't know if I'm an idiot, but I'm from Reading, and I for all my life thought Kenneth Branagh was from Reading, which he is, but only after he moved there from Belfast. And so this was always quite interesting to me. I love Jude Hill. He's fantastic. He's so really great, warm and engaging, and all the cast are great. Kieran Hines is always wonderful. I love seeing him.
Kieran Hines and Judi Dench are my couple goals for when I'm older.
Exactly.
Like the connection that they have and how they converse with each other is just lovely.
And the black and white, the way it's shot, it's very dramatic in what Kenneth Branagh described as glossy black and white.
Yes.
Which is kind of...
it's sharp and it's clear. It's not in any way filmic or hazy.
No, it's meant to be almost the... you've got very strong blacks and very strong whites. And it's almost adding to that very binary, polarized, dichotomized way that a child looks at the world. There's
Yeah.
good and bad, and that's it. You know, there's
it
mum and
wasn't-
dad. There's,
I mean, it wasn't traditionally cinematic. It
Yes.
is cinematic.
Yes.
It was actually shot on a large format camera called the Alexa Mini, which is the same camera that 1917 was shot on.
Ah, right.
Which was doing a similar thing where it wasn't trying to be overly cinematic. It was clear in its presentation, and it was about details.
1917 wasn't trying to be cinematic.
No, as in its literal, its shots weren't trying to present this overly artistic,
see.
like
I see, yeah.
larger than life. It was
Yeah.
this is the clear horror of what it means to walk through.
Yeah,
is what I
and
should have said.
the way that the frame is set up in Belfast is very much these sort of like large tableaus where
Yes,
there's a lot of
it's a scene.
stillness. Yeah, there's a scene, and then there's a lot of just a bit of action happening to one side of the frame. Almost
Lots
very
of like
theatrical.
1, 2, 3. You
Yeah,
had like a
thirds,
near,
yeah.
a mid, and then a far, and
Yeah.
everything was kind of there. Like how you would remember a room or a hallway
Yeah.
or your house when you were growing
Yeah,
up.
your grandmother was in the corner, and and something else came through, which is great. And I think if I didn't have a very rich reaction to it, very strong, for a reason that I've identified with going to the cinema. I love going to the cinema, and I've really enjoyed revisiting it now the pandemic is in a different stage.
Yeah.
But I saw this in a multiplex screening room at
Yep.
6:30 on a Tuesday evening, and
Okay.
it was empty. I was one of me and my friend saw it.
That's kind of good though, right?
Well, no, because me and my
No?
friend saw it at the front, and there were two other people sat at the back. So you've got this huge open. I'm talking a massive multiplex
really big
screening room,
screen, yeah.
huge screen room, completely empty and dead.
Right.
And it felt quite sterile and cold.
No adrenaline.
No, there was just no vibe. When you got such a warm film, and
Never thought about that, but
well,
that must be a thing.
that's I saw. I've spoken to people who've seen it. Someone I know who really enjoyed it. They saw it in a packed screening room where everyone was chuckling and guffawing, and I missed that kind of chucklesome, wholesome idea. For a film that's so
Togetherness.
warm and together, I felt very sterile, which was a shame. Not the film's fault at all, but it's just interesting to know how your viewing experience can.
I never thought about that because I'm always like, yes, the adrenaline of other people is so great, but I'm always like, wouldn't it be lovely to have my own private cinema? But actually, the shared experience is kind of part of
That's the thing.
seeing something.
I went to the cinema to have a shared experience, and I didn't.
didn't.
If anything, it magnified the fact that I was just me and my mate
In a room.
In a room, yeah. I also think that for sometimes for me, I felt that it almost didn't stack up to anything more than the sum of its parts. But what I mean by that is that
think I
it's
know what
like
you mean.
they're like individual vignettes and memories that I think just are moment to moment. They're not really adding up or building to anything sort of greater.
I thought so too.
And I know you can say that's like the childlike view, but actually there's a difference between like being childlike and being childish. And I'm like, so I think what I mean to say is, when I said it went from moment to moment, the best and worst thing I can say about Belfast is that it's like being sat next to someone who's recounting their childhood to you. And the best times of that is when
And
they
what
go,
made them who they are
Yeah,
as well.
then we had this wonderful and you have this warmth and this emotion coming through, and it's so beautiful. But the downside of that is also it's a bit rambly, tangential, doesn't quite add up moment to moment. Oh, and then we did this, and then we did that, and then we did that. And that's what I meant when I said like, people might say, oh, the and then sort of narrative structure is quite childlike, but I actually think it's childish. What I would have been more interested in is seeing a film that presents that child's perspective heavily contrasted with the sort of conflict in the adult world. And what I mean by that is like, there are films like Spielberg does it great, like Empire of the Sun, or like Taika Waititi does it great in Boy, or even Hunt for the Wilder People, and that you have the child's eye perspective where you can enjoy, but then you get more meaning by contrasting that with the adult's perspective. And I know there's the scenes with Colin Morgan and Jamie Dornan, but I always felt the film was flitting between dramas and conflicts and here and there, and I never got like it never came together, all these moments, lovely moments, but it never truly came together for me. But it's fine. It doesn't bother me. It's still a lovely, warm film.
I see what you mean when there was that at the end. I was like, was there more to it, or maybe something that I missed? Because it has this. I don't think this is a spoiler. When the film wraps and whatever happens, it comes up on the screen that says, "To those who left, to those who stayed, to those whose lives were lost." Something I won't go into the wording. And it's this wonderfully heartwarming moment where you realise who this film is for. And I think maybe that sense of leaving a place because of a conflict might just really be lost on me because that's not something I've had to do.
Totally, yeah.
And I think it is, like, as we said, a really personal story where I think Kenneth Branagh said he wanted permission from his siblings and his cousins and his parents, not his parents, like his family, to essentially check that he was making this for the right reasons and that it was true to what that was. And I think maybe the decision of them, I don't think this is a spoiler. We know that eventually they decided to leave, and that's the decision they made. Them deciding to leave weighed so heavy on their heart because they came from that street, and the way in which they shoot that street is so distinctive. And you can tell I think they did build a street to shoot on, but you can tell like this was home, and everyone who lived on it was home. And I think that decision maybe doesn't affect me as much because of as a byproduct of my own upbringing and where I happen to live right now.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's why I was like, like that's really sweet, but what else was it apart from, like you say, and then next vignettes of story?
I agree that, like, obviously we had no sort of we come from a sort of privileged position of not being affected by like this in a direct way. Yeah. Obviously the counter argument is that, but the film should still make you, empathize and get involved. I think that the move to England, the
across the water
always felt like a foregone conclusion. I never felt like that was a point that the film arrived at naturally to be like, and now we're moving to England. I felt like it was already something that we all knew, and they were just kind of giving us the greatest hits of what happened in the last 6 months of their lives in Belfast.
And there was lots of pressure, but never a direct conflict. Do you remember when Colin Morgan was like, you either contribute financially or you contribute with like blood, essentially, like you turn up. And that sort of was a really obvious threat in the first act. You're like, oh, I wonder how that develops. And it didn't really. Yeah. And it's not that it needed to for dramatic effect, but I'm almost like it didn't come to like a big real moment where everyone has to go, right, it's this or that, we have to go.
You want, as an audience, I think, to look at the child's, be informed by the real threat that's happening in the adult world, and then look at the child's world and go, oh, I'm really worried for him because of this stuff that I've seen happening in the kids' world. And equally, you want to look at the parental adult world and say, and be warmed by the child's perspective. You want it to be sort of softened and given a new perspective on it. But I mean, there's some wonderful Jude Hill when he there's a scene where he cries and it's so beautiful.
Yeah. And
there's
talking to the grandparents as well.
Yeah.
So well
and when
done.
they go to the theatre and they go to the cinema, those are shot in colour.
Yeah.
And they really like bold through, and it's like the role of art and escapism in
everything.
This time.
Yeah, and what it would have meant for Kenneth Branagh, I can imagine.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. So everything was in colour. That essentially was media or anything that,
but not television, because television was still black and white.
Yes, yeah. And you can tell, like, I think there's this moment where he went to go see Chitty Chitty Bang Bang with his family for the first time. And you can just imagine what that would have been like to be in Belfast. And then you see that film in full Technicolor, and like it lights up their eyes. You can see the colour in their eyes, which is such a, it's not like the thing you've never seen before as I don't want to say trick to like highlight something, but you can imagine that for a lot of people, the escapism that those early, sort of late 1970s media would have been for so many people who have access to it.
Late 60s. Yeah.
Sorry, late 60s. Yeah.
I was thinking about the way it's shot as well, and I think there was almost there are times when the film is shot in a very sort of stark, dynamic. This is a child's eyes perspective on the world,
wide angle. Yeah,
where like there's a scene where Buddy, the child, is stood behind Jamie Dornan, and it's looking up, and it's like you've got this really imposing defensive figure of him standing.
POV.
Yeah, point of view. But then there were some times when I think Kenneth Branagh was like aiming for those kind of like artistic flourishes, those formal flourishes, which I actually found almost a bit too intrusive. And that's fine in a film where it's like Roma, when you have someone like Alfonso Cuarón, who is much more of a cinematic or like overview approach kind of director. Sure. But Kenneth Branagh comes from the theatre; he's an actor's director, and there were times when I almost felt it saying, Ken, stop the wide angles and other stuff. Just give me the people, because that's the best bit of the film. Is the stuff between the people.
I agree.
And I almost find it intrusive to then think, oh, you're pulling away, you're doing this. No, focus on the human connection.
I agree. The human connections were great. Like seeing Judi Dench's face and if you've got Dame Judi Dench, you capture the raw emotion of her face and you just give it to the audience. And I also like the way he shot the street of Belfast, and we talk about how he sort of did a lot of rule of thirds and like foreground stuff, and the way in which they shot the gates and the walls and the fences in that, you could tell it was like, I remember like the scuffs on the corner as I would swipe past it, and there was this little like iron gate which they used to squeeze through on the way to school. There's all these little details that again, like that camera specifically is very sharp, and you can tell that it's like remembered clearly, and you can see people like punching through and the hand marks left on the streets. It's just another thing you can just imagine what that literal place meant to him and like him and his child and how simple it was. And I was like, I really can tell you are remembering the dust of the pavement really well, and I get that.
I was just thinking also about another film that really captures the balance between a child's experience and an adult's experience is Billy Elliot. And I remember that scene in Billy Elliot where he's walking down the street with the girl from the neighborhood, and she's running her stick along the wall and the fences because it makes the noise, and as they're walking and it's just unbroken, they're talking, and then her stick eventually runs against the riot shields of the police who are just waiting there, and then she just carries on walking. And I'm not saying Belfast doesn't do those things, but I think what I'm saying is I think the way that the child and the parental worlds interact has been more interestingly done in other films, and I would have liked to see more of that in Belfast. However, it's not bad as it is. So I think on the whole, I think it's it's cool, it's fine, it's it's warming. It's
I'd recommend people to see it. I think it's really good.
There's nothing horrible about it, and it's very hard to be mean about it. It's
And George, having seen barely any of the films that have been nominated for Best Picture, do you think it will win Best Picture?
Well, again, I think I've only seen
it's up for it.
that and West Side Story. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I need to really review the list.
Anyway.
We'll go over this in the future. Don't worry, guys.
But I'm just curious. Like, do you think? Obviously, you've not seen them, but do you think it has that potential to win Best Picture this year?
I think I'd be a little underwhelmed if it won Best
Yeah.
Picture. I can see why if it did.
Yeah.
In a very sort of like, again, no pun intended, but black and white way. It's like, everyone loves a kid. No one likes war. No one likes conflict. Isn't this sweet? Give it to Belfast. Everyone likes Ken Branagh. Like, sure.
Yeah.
I think it probably could go for a better film, but we'll see when we report back.
And that film was shot a while ago. It was shot during the heat of 2020 lockdown.
Yeah.
And it was shut down. They had all these issues with shooting with Judi Dench. She's in her mid to late 80s, I think.
Yeah,
and
of
you've got
course.
a young kid there. Apparently, it's a really, really hard one to get just shot and done. But
What about you? What would you say?
What do I think it's going to win? Based on having not seen the other films, I think I agree. I'd be like, I don't want to say that it shouldn't have won, but I can imagine there'll be something else I'll watch which I think will connect with me more.
Again, not to be like damning with faint praise, but solid middle of the pack.
Yeah, maybe. And again, we haven't seen them, but
So we don't know.
We could be like, that's the best film of the year, or we could be like, wow, these other films have really succeeded it. But
Guess we'll have to wait and see.
it's one for mum and dad. Take
is.
mum and
Yeah,
dad
one
to
for
see
the
it.
family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just not literally 2 minutes from here the other day, I saw Brian Cox from Succession, and it was really strange.
And much else
because-
besides.
Sorry,
He's in-
and
he-
much else, but
yeah,
most recently. But the reason
Of
why I
course.
say Succession is because he was dressed like Logan Roy in Succession. It was really weird because I was walking on my local high street, and I'm looking ahead at this guy. I'm like, that guy kind of looks a lot like. Oh, that is Brian Cox from Succession. But you know he was wearing. You know when he wears like the dark blue hat and the glasses and the coat. He was dressed exactly like that.
Maybe they're filming it. I don't know.
They weren't. No, they weren't. But I was just like, how in the UK?
Good point. There are some scenes in the UK, as we
There
know.
were no cameras. But yeah, I just walked past it because like that guy looks exactly. And I got close and I was like, that is Brian Cox. I was like, shit, what do? Do I just like ask him to tell me to fuck off? Like, do I-
Say the catchphrase. Say the catchphrase. That's
so weird though.
but it's definitely him.
100%. I mean, I was like within 2 meters of him, and I was like, yeah, that's definitely Brian Cox.
You know, he was the first Hannibal Lecter.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
which I've
I
never
did know
seen
that.
in Manhunter. Yes.
He had, what was the other thing he was in? That
X2. X-Men 2.
X-Men 2 is Striker.
Yeah.
Yes. No, forget that. But yeah,
He's just
so
been around
weird.
for ages and stuff. He's in the Bourne, a couple of the Bourne films. I'm
Yes,
pretty sure.
he's one of like the evil corporate
He's just
guys.
the shady guy in Authority.
Yeah, and he was Agamemnon in Troy.
Right. Yes.
Yes.
Is that the father of Helen of Troy?
No, the husband.
What?
They were married, no? It was his wife. And
No,
in
no, Eric
Paris.
Banner was married to Paris. Not Paris. No, because that's why Eric Banner fights Brad Pitt.
No,
Yeah.
Eric Banner fights Brad Pitt, so Paris doesn't have to, because Paris would die.
Paris is Orlando Bloom.
No, Eric Banner fights Brad Pitt because Eric Banner kills Brad Pitt's cousin who pretends to be Achilles.
Right.
Eric Banner's like, oh, that's Achilles. Kill him. takes off his helmet. Oh shit, it's Achilles' cousin.
Right.
Achilles flips out, stands outside the gates of Troy, screams Hector's name.
Hector.
Yes. And then Paris is at fault because he shagged Helen of Troy.
Well, thank you.
When Troy and the Spartans were having a peace dinner,
Right.
he was upstairs doing the
it.
business.
Orlando Bloom in this, right?
Orlando Bloom.
Right.
Typical. And then and Agamemnon was right. No, it was Menelaus of Sparta's wife. Agamemnon had wanted to take Troy for himself for ages. And he was like, great, he's been shagging a wife, let's go to war.
Yeah, but who's
Helen was married to Menelaus.
So Diane Kruger is Helen of
Diane
Troy.
Kruger is Helen of Troy.
Brian Cox.
Yes. Brian Cox is Agamemnon, and Brendan Gleeson was Menelaus, was it Spartans?
Wow.
Spartan?
Brendan Gleeson, such a Greek-looking man. You must be like an absolute Troy fanatic. I've only seen that film once.
I'm just now remembering it. Well, I confused
Sean
quite a
Bean.
lot to get to where we are now.
Sean Bean as Odysseus.
Yeah, Sean
And then
Bean is
Paris with the arrow and the heel, the Achilles heel, right?
Achilles heel. Yeah, that's a long film. It's a long film.
I don't think it's meant to be great, right?
No, it was. I remember it was a really big. It was a very expensive film to make. It was one of those, it was like sort of old school Hollywood, shot on location.
It's
in
old
Greece.
school, but that's only 2004.
No, but it has that sort of Lawrence of Arabia style.
We want to do a historical epic, but
Yes.
it's also a bit dumb-headed. It hasn't got the grace and the beauty of Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah, it's like we're going to take 2 hours and 45 minutes to tell this epic story. We're going to do it with big
Gladiator
wide
light.
cameras, gladiator light, very much so. Overly, it was in that like sort of early noughties genre of we're going to get like the blood's going to spurt out of the neck, and that's shocking.
Yeah.
And Saving Private Ryan came out recently, and that's what we do now with war films.
And the everything's shot in orange and blue. The strong
Teal
color
and
tones
orange.
are there. I don't know why that is. If you look at like posters from the late noughties, it's all orange and blues.
Teal and orange, yeah. It's teal and orange is like a standard color grading aesthetic where you turn your shadows into teal and your highlights into orange, and it's said to give contrast. Michael Bay just turns that up to like
1 billion.
300 to the point where like I actually find skin tones in like Transformers or even his Netflix films. They just like you can see they're like blotchy and orange where the light hits them, and it's just too much. But it's just this. It was a very trendy thing to do to like create a lot of contrast in your image back in the day.
You know, you mentioned Saving Private Ryan. Actually, we watched that last weekend.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
How'd you find it?
Well, it's still great. You know, I mean, there's not much. I've seen it so many times, and I would take myself when I was a kid and watch the opening scene like, again and again and again because it's so compelling. So I have seen this film so many times. But what I found on this time was, still very good, still great, all that stuff. First of all, there's so many people in it who I forgot were in it.
I bet I forgot.
Ted Danson, Bryan
No.
Cranston, Paul Giamatti, Nathan Fillion,
Yeah, okay.
Giovanni
Nathan Fillion.
Ribisi, and I'm pretty sure there's a bit with Ewan McGregor, but I have to look that up.
We got everyone in.
And then the other thing was that it's got a weirdly cruel sense of humor in it, which is quite weird. I'm talking about 3 instances. There's the bit at the beach at the beginning where a guy gets dinked on the helmet, but the bullet doesn't go through, and he's like so shocked. He takes off the bullet,
Yes.
takes off the helmet, touches his forehead. He's so relieved. Then the bullet goes through.
Yeah,
his neck, right?
I remember
And
that.
it's like a real cruel joke.
It's like a Family Guy
Yeah,
sketch,
it's like
isn't it?
And then there's a bit later where they go to. I mean, this film's been out a while, so it's semi-spoilers. They find Private Ryan and they bring him forward and they sit him down. They say, you know, James, I'm sorry to tell you that your brothers have been killed, and he's really upset. And it turns out it's the wrong Private Ryan, and it's like this joke. But this guy's really upset because he thinks his brothers are dead. He's like, oh no, your brothers are fine, and it works. But you're like, okay. And then there's a bit right in the final battle where they've made these sticky bombs to disable the tanks.
Yeah.
And as the tank's running around the street, one of these soldiers like lights it, and the fuse is going down. He's like approaching the tank, and he's looking at where to put it, and then the bomb just explodes in his hand. And he just explodes, like the fuse just goes quick, just boom, and like this just red cloud of dust. And I'm like, oh, it's just like
Tone slightly.
It's like a black comedy of like, oh, this is war, man.
war.
Just
Yeah.
if you're not careful, something will go off in your hand, and your whole fibers will just.
I bet it did. I bet you were just hanging out with a guy one day, and then something really. I bet there were loads of unfortunate random instances at war.
God.
It's not
Oh,
clean
yeah.
cut. It's clunky.
Yeah, I mean, God. I mean, I don't even want to think about it. Thanks so much. I don't want that with my breakfast.
Yeah.
I don't want that with my salmon.
Welcome.
Thanks for joining us, guys. We've got new episodes every Wednesday, and we've got plenty more content coming on the channel throughout the week.
If you are watching this video, please give us a like and subscribe. It really does make a huge difference. And if you are listening, please feel free to download the episode, give us a review. It makes a huge difference.
We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok. Follow us there as well for lots of updates.
Yeah, we do breakout clips. And then we're going to post a new episode every single Wednesday, except when I'm COVID. And then we'll do extra content throughout the week.
Yeah.
See you next week.
See you next week.